Hey everyone, welcome back to another deep dive with us. You ever get that feeling like, your to-do list just keeps growing and growing and everything feels super urgent? Well, today we're going to dive deep into how to prioritize, really how to prioritize like a pro. I'm Alex.
And I'm Meyer.
And Maya is our expert guide today. We've got a fantastic mix of sources lined up, articles on individual task management, a bit about team dynamics, and even some cool insights into how we can use software to schedule better, keep our projects, on track.
Yeah.
So Maya, when everything feels important, where do we even start?
Well, it seems like a lot of our sources actually agree on this, and that's step one is like a good old-fashioned brain dump,
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just about making a list. It's about clearing out all those mental to-dos that are always swirling around in your head.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Work deadlines, that leaky faucet I've been meaning to fix, even remembering to pick up the dry cleaning. It's a constant mental juggling act.
Exactly. And by actually getting it all down, even the tiniest, most insignificant tasks, it helps you start to see that bigger picture and honestly can really reduce that feeling of overwhelm. Think about it. Don't you often feel lighter after just writing down everything that's on your mind? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, I know I do, for sure. But once you have it all out there, that's when the real challenge hits, right? How do you tell what's actually urgent from what's just, important?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? One of the sources we looked at, they had a really good analogy. It was imagining a broken pipe in your house, versus planning for retirement. So that pipe, that's urgent, it needs fixing now. But retirement planning, that's super important, but it's not an immediate crisis, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I can see that playing out at work, too. A last-minute client request might feel super urgent in the moment, but neglecting a long-term project, that could have bigger consequences down the line. So how do we avoid falling into that trap, of doing the easy things first, even if they're not the most important?
Well, there's actually a name for this. It's called completion bias.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so basically our brains get this little reward, this dopamine hit from checking things off a list. And that happens even if they're not, the most crucial tasks. So it kind of tricks us into feeling productive. But we might actually be neglecting those really big, important goals. Think about your own work. Do you ever catch yourself, say, cleaning your desk instead of tackling that big report you've been putting off? Tell us about it in the comments.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
But once you've figured out those VIP tasks, how do you actually prioritize them? It feels like there's a million different methods out there.
It really is like a buffet of options. One source even called it a prioritization menu.
A prioritization menu.
Yeah. So you've got things like eat the frog. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard of that one, yeah.
Yeah, that's all about tackling the biggest, most daunting task first to get it out of the way. And then there's the classic, Eisenhower Matrix. That's where you divide tasks into 4 quadrants based on urgency and importance.
Right.
And then you've got things like the ABCDE method, where you assign letter grades to your tasks.
Wow. So many choices. So how do you know which one's right for you?
That's where I think understanding your work style comes in and the specific project. For example, if you're someone who thrives on getting those big challenging tasks done first, eat the frog might be a perfect fit for you. But if you're more of a visual person and you need a system, to map out urgency versus importance, the Eisenhower Matrix could be a better choice.
Makes sense.
We've also got the most important task method, which that one's all about focusing on just 1 to 3 key tasks. And for those who really love breaking things down, there's chunking, dividing work into focused blocks of time. Right.
So many options. And then, of course, there's agile prioritization, which we saw mentioned in one of the articles.
What about that? Agile prioritization.
Yeah, that's a bit more of a complex system. It's often used in software development. But the principles can be applied elsewhere, too. It's all about adapting to change, prioritizing tasks based on how they depend on each other, and then constantly reevaluating what needs to be done next. So it's less about a rigid plan and more about, responding to the evolving needs of a project.
Yeah.
What stood out to you from all these methods? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments.
I'm kind of intrigued by this idea of chunking. Breaking down those big tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks just feels a lot less overwhelming. But what happens when it's not just you? How do you prioritize effectively when you're part of a team?
That's where things get really interesting and potentially very challenging, because now you're dealing with multiple people and they each have their own priorities, their own deadlines. And probably their own ways of working, like different preferences for how they manage their to-do lists.
Exactly. So really effective teamwork, it relies on clear communication and everyone understanding the team's overall goals. Because if everyone's just focused on their own individual tasks, you can end up working, at cross purposes, missing deadlines, creating unnecessary stress.
It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint. Just chaos.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
Yeah. And this is where those software tools can actually come in really handy. We saw a lot about teamwork.com and Asana in the articles we read. What's fascinating is that these platforms, they go beyond just listing tasks. They really provide a central hub, for communication, scheduling, assigning tasks, even tracking progress. It's all in one place.
So instead of juggling emails, spreadsheets, and sticky notes, you have a streamlined system where everyone can see what's going on.
Exactly. And that transparency can be a real game changer for teams. Imagine being able to quickly see who's working on what the deadlines are, even potential roadblocks or dependencies. It helps avoid those moments of wait, I thought you were handling that.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that level of clarity could definitely reduce stress and conflict. But are there any downsides to relying so heavily on software for prioritization? What do you think? Share your experiences in the comments. We'd love to hear them.
Oh, there's definitely things to consider for sure. One potential downside, I think, is becoming too reliant on the tool itself. It's important to remember that software is just that. It's a tool. It can't think for us.
Right.
And it certainly can't make decisions for us.
It's like having that fancy GPS system, right?
Yeah.
It can guide you, but you still got to know where you're going in the first place.
Exactly. And relying too heavily on software, I think, it can also lead to a loss of flexibility and creativity. Sometimes those best solutions, they come from brainstorming sessions or those, informal conversations that happen organically. And those moments, you could easily miss them if everyone's just glued to their screen.
So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Utilizing the power of software, but also realizing the importance of, human interaction, critical thinking.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another crucial aspect that several sources actually highlighted, connecting your prioritization to your personal values and goals.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really powerful, right? It's not just about getting things done. It's about making sure those tasks align with what matters most to you.
Exactly. One source, How to Prioritize Your Life, really emphasized developing this personal leadership philosophy. And it's about, figuring out what your core values are and making sure the goals you're working towards, they actually reflect those values.
Otherwise, you might end up achieving things that don't truly fulfill you.
Exactly. And that source also suggested creating what they call an aspirations list, a collection of those big dreams and goals that keep you motivated, and inspired. Think about it. If you could wave a magic wand and achieve anything you wanted, what would be on your list? Share your aspirations in the comments.
I love that idea. It's like having this North Star, to guide your decisions and keep you focused on what really matters in the long run.
Yeah. And remember, this isn't just a one-time exercise. It's about regularly reflecting on your progress, making adjustments as needed and staying connected to your why.
So it's like having this compass to make sure that you're not just busy, but you're busy doing things that are meaningful, aligned with your values.
Absolutely. And this ties into the concept of opportunity cost, recognizing that every time you say yes to something, you're also implicitly saying no to something else.
So learning to prioritize also means learning to say no to things that don't align with those values or goals, even if they seem really tempting in the moment.
Which can be incredibly hard. But it's essential if you want to design a life that reflects what you truly care about.
To all our amazing listeners out there, remember this. Your priorities are yours. Don't let external pressures dictate what matters most. Take that time to figure out what truly matters to you, and then use these fantastic techniques and tools to make it happen.
That's a great point. Prioritization, it's not just about getting things done. It's about designing a life that really reflects your values, your aspirations.
That's beautifully said. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into prioritization, but there's still so much more to explore.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to delve into how our individual personalities and work styles can impact our approach to prioritization. Hey there! Hope you're enjoying the show. Want to sponsor our podcast? We're open to it. We can feature your product in a quick break and include an affiliate link in the description. Reach out to us Instagram at AlexMayaPodcasts or search for Alex and Maya Podcasts on Instagram.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're continuing our exploration of prioritization, and in this part, we're going to get a little bit more personal.
That's right. We've talked about all these different methods and the importance of aligning your tasks with your values. But how do our individual personalities and work styles actually play into all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It makes sense that, how we approach prioritization could be different, like depending on if we're naturally structured people or, more spontaneous. What did you find in the sources about that?
Well, one of the sources pointed out that some people just thrive on routine, and having a really clear plan, while others are much more flexible and adaptable.
Oh, I'm definitely in that routine camp. Having a structured schedule just helps me stay on track. How about you?
I lean more towards the flexibility side. I like to have a general outline, but I'm also happy to adjust my priorities as needed. And the sources actually suggest that both approaches have their strengths.
Makes sense. It's about finding what works for you, not trying to force yourself into a mold that doesn't fit.
Exactly. And it's not just about personality types. Our energy levels throughout the day, those can also play a role. Have you ever noticed that you're more productive at certain times?
Oh, absolutely. I'm definitely a morning person. So I try to tackle my most challenging tasks, early in the day when my brain is fresh. What about you?
I'm more of an afternoon person. I tend to hit my stride a little bit later in the day. But knowing your peak productivity times, that can be a game changer for prioritization.
It's like working with your natural rhythms instead of fighting against them.
Yeah.
So we talked about individual styles, but how does all this actually translate to a team environment?
Yeah, that's where the real magic happens, but also the potential for challenges, right?
Right.
Because when you've got a team with different work styles and preferences, communication becomes even more crucial.
And that means not just communicating what needs to be done, but also how each person prefers to work, what their strengths are.
Exactly. One source really emphasized the importance of regular team check-ins and not just to discuss progress, but also to address any potential conflicts or roadblocks, especially ones related to prioritization.
It's like having a huddle,
Yeah.
before the big game, making sure everyone's on the same page and they know their role. What were some of the specific challenges that came up in the sources?
Well, one recurring theme was the importance of having a clear decision-making process for prioritization within the team.
So it's not just about everyone shouting out their own priorities, but having a system in place to figure out what actually takes precedence.
Exactly. This might involve a voting system, maybe designating a specific decision maker, or even establishing really clear criteria for evaluating the importance and urgency of tasks. Think about your own experiences with team projects. Have you ever run into situations where that lack of clear decision making caused confusion or conflict? Share your stories in the comments.
That's a great point. And it's not just about internal team dynamics, right? The broader work culture can also have an influence on how teams approach prioritization.
Oh, for sure. Some work environments are just super deadline driven, prioritizing speed and efficiency above everything else. Others might emphasize quality and craftsmanship, allowing for more time to really perfect things.
And those values can definitely shape how teams decide what to focus on and how much time they give to different tasks.
Exactly. In a fast-paced environment, teams might just prioritize those tasks that have immediate consequences, even if they're not strategically important, in the long run. While in a quality-focused culture, teams might be more willing to push back on unrealistic deadlines or maybe dedicate extra time to really ensure excellence.
It's interesting how these bigger cultural factors can really play into the equation. And speaking of factors that influence how we work, we can't forget about technology.
Ah, yes. Technology. It's like that double-edged sword of the digital age, isn't it?
Right.
Technology can be an amazing tool for enhancing productivity, streamlining workflows, but it can also be a major source of distraction and, just overwhelm.
It's like having a supercomputer in your pocket. Amazing potential, but also the potential to completely suck you into this vortex of endless notifications and information overload.
That's where the concept of digital minimalism comes in. It was actually mentioned in quite a few of the sources we looked at. It's about being much more intentional with your relationship with technology, using it in a way that really supports your goals and values rather than letting it control you.
So it's not about ditching technology altogether, but being more mindful, more selective about how you actually use it. What were some of the specific strategies that they suggested?
Well, they recommended things like setting boundaries around technology use, having specific times where you check your email or social media, disabling non-essential notifications, just ways to reduce those interruptions.
Those are great tips. I know I definitely need to be better about setting those boundaries with my phone. It's way too easy to get sucked into the endless scroll. Do you have any personal strategies for managing your own digital distractions?
One thing I've found helpful is just designating certain areas as like tech-free zones. My bedroom, for example. Yeah. And the dinner table.
Oh, I love that idea. It's creating those spaces for focus and presence, not only in your physical environment, but also in your mental space.
And this kind of brings us back to the core of prioritization, right? It's about those conscious choices that you're making about how you spend your time, your energy.
It's about aligning your actions with what truly matters to you, both personally and professionally.
And it's about recognizing that this isn't just, a one-time thing. Prioritization, it's an ongoing process.
Right.
You've got to check in with yourself, reassess your priorities, make adjustments as needed. Life is full of curveballs, so flexibility and adaptability, I think, those are key.
I love that. It's about being the captain of your own ship, navigating those ever-changing waters of life with a clear sense of direction and purpose. Speaking of direction and purpose, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Here's a powerful question. Imagine yourself a year from now. What would you be the most proud of having accomplished? And what are those steps you can take today to start making that vision a reality?
I get it. Yeah. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From brain dumps to prioritization matrices. We even talked about how personality, teamwork, technology, they all kind of play a role in how we decide what to tackle first.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey.
It really has. But before we wrap up, I think it would be great to, just distill a few of the key takeaways, some things our listeners can actually put into practice starting today.
Absolutely.
So what are some nuggets of wisdom, that really stood out to you?
Well, one of the biggest things for me is that, prioritizing, it's not about doing everything. It's really about making those conscious choices, focusing on the right things.
Right, and the right things. Those are the things that, really align with your goals, your values, the bigger picture, what you're trying to achieve. So before you even start making lists or, grabbing your favorite productivity app, take a moment and just reflect. What really matters to you? What are your non-negotiables? What are those accomplishments that would make you feel like you're really moving in the right direction?
Those are some really powerful questions. And once you have that clarity, then you can start applying the methods and techniques we talked about.
Right.
And creating that roadmap for getting things done. And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all solution here.
Exactly.
Experiment, try different methods, see what works for you and your specific work style. What works for one person might not work for another. And it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing either. Prioritization is an ongoing practice. It's dynamic. Check in with yourself regularly, reassess, make those adjustments. Life, it throws us curveballs all the time. So I think flexibility and adaptability, those are really key.
Yeah. I love that. It's about being the captain of your own ship.
Yeah.
Navigating the ever-changing waters of life, but with a clear sense of direction and purpose. Speaking of direction and purpose, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
How about this? Imagine yourself a year from now. What would you be the most proud of having accomplished? What steps can you take, today, to start making that vision a reality?
Wow. That's a really great question to reflect on. It kind of brings this whole concept of prioritization full circle. It's not just about managing tasks. It's about, really shaping the life that you want to live.
Exactly. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the art of prioritization. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, maybe even a little bit life-changing.
We always love hearing from you. So please share your thoughts, your experiences, your favorite prioritization tips down in the comments below. Let us know what resonated with you, how you plan to put these ideas into practice. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the deep dive. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode.
Next time on the deep dive, we'll be tackling a topic that's relevant to all of us: how to avoid heated arguments. A valuable skill, no matter what area of life you're in.
So stay tuned, and until then, keep diving deep.